Hey guys, tonight we are going to explore the quiet corners of the human mind, venturing into a space that is both deeply unsettling and profoundly mysterious. Picture this with me, if you will. The soft ambient hum of a hospital room, the sterile scent of antiseptic, and the gentle rhythmic beep of a monitor. You're lying on a table completely still, but in a way that feels utterly alien to you. A doctor stands over you, their voice a distant muffled sound, and you feel the slight cool brush of a surgical instrument against your skin. You are in surgery, but a part of you is awake. A part of you is listening. The world is a blurry, distorted painting, and you are trapped within its frame. The thought is enough to make anyone's blood run cold, isn't it? But don't worry, the chances of this happening are incredibly rare, and you'll probably survive it. Just fine. Probably. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love for you to drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is for you. In that quiet space, wherever you are, let's begin our journey into a stillness that is anything but silent, into the heart of a phenomenon known as anesthesia awareness. Anesthesia awareness is one of those subjects that whispers to us from the shadows of medical science, a story told in hushed tones that speaks to our most primal fears. It's the kind of thing you hear about in a movie or a half-remembered anecdote, but its reality is far more subtle and complex than any Hollywood dramatization. It's not about waking up and screaming in terror, unable to move. It's about a quiet internal awakening. It's a bit like being in a dream where you're just a spectator, observing a story unfold without the ability to interact with it, but the story is your own surgery. The scientific term for this state is intraoperative awareness, and while it's a terrifying thought, its true nature is more of a glitch in the system than a complete system failure. Think of your brain as a magnificent sprawling city, bustling with activity, a constant hum of communication. Anesthesia is designed to shut down the main power grid, plunging the city into a state of deep restorative sleep. But sometimes a single street lamp, a small forgotten corner of the city, remains dimly lit. That's what we're talking about here, a flicker of consciousness in a sea of darkness. The true mystery of anesthesia awareness is not just that it happens, but why. The most common explanation, and one that is still being debated, is that the concentration of anesthetic drugs is simply too low. Anesthesia is a delicate balancing act, a careful dance between giving enough to keep you unconscious and not so much that it becomes dangerous. The anesthesiologist, a master conductor of this intricate symphony, uses various instruments to measure your body's response from your heart rate and blood pressure to the amount of oxygen in your blood. But what if these instruments are not telling the whole story? What if the body's outward calm is a facade, a silent scream hidden beneath the surface? This is where the concept of implicit memory comes into play. It's a fascinating and slightly unnerving idea. Implicit memory is like a ghost in your cognitive machine. It's a kind of memory that you don't consciously recall. It's the reason you can ride a bicycle without thinking about it, or the reason you can hum a song you heard once, years ago, without knowing where it came from. In the context of anesthesia awareness, a person might not remember the experience of being awake during surgery, but they might experience a host of new symptoms afterward, like a sudden anxiety or a fear of hospitals without knowing why. The memory of the event is there, but it's buried deep, a silent seed waiting to sprout. The mind in its infinite complexity is a layered thing. There is the conscious mind, the part of you that is listening to me right now, processing these words, and there is the subconscious mind, a vast, swirling ocean of thoughts, emotions, and memories that you are not actively aware of. Anesthesia, for the most part, simply puts a lock on the door of the conscious mind. It's a key that turns in the lock, and the door to your waking self remains closed. But the house itself, the rest of your brain, is still very much alive. It is still processing, still listening, still reacting. It's a bit like being in a house that you think is empty, but you can hear the faint, distant sound of music coming from a closed room. This is the heart of our first, quiet, unsettling mystery. Why, when the conscious mind is silenced, does the subconscious remain so attentive? It's a question that has baffled scientists for decades, and one that leads us down a fascinating path. The truth is, we don't really know for sure if the subconscious is truly listening, or if it's merely a strange form of electrical echo, a residual hum of activity that we have yet to fully understand. One of the key things we need to understand is the difference between being awake and being conscious. This might sound like a simple distinction, but it's a profound one. Being awake is a physiological state. It means your body's systems are functioning as they would in a waking state. Your heart is pumping, your lungs are breathing, your brain is sending electrical signals. Consciousness, on the other hand, is the subjective experience of being you. It's the feeling of awareness, the sense of self, the internal monologue. Anesthesia is designed to separate these two things. It keeps the body's systems running, but it turns off the light of consciousness. Anesthesia awareness is the rare and unsettling event when this light flickers back on. It's a bit like a power outage, where you're expecting complete darkness, but a single candle in the corner of a room refuses to be extinguished. It's not enough to illuminate the entire space, but it's enough for you to know you're not alone in the dark. The body has its own language, a secret code of signals and responses that it uses to communicate with the brain. We see this in the simple act of a baby reaching for its mother's hand, or in the involuntary flinch when a doctor taps your knee with a little rubber hammer. This language, this symphony of sensation, is what anesthesia is meant to mute. It's a kind of universal translator that is supposed to turn all the signals of touch, pain, and pressure into a kind of white noise, a meaningless static. But sometimes a single word, a single note, cuts through the static. This is what can happen during an awareness event. A person might feel a sharp pressure or tugging sensation, not as pain in the way we normally think of it, but as a kind of distorted alien input. It's a bit like hearing a foreign language that you don't understand, but you can tell from the tone of the voice that something is wrong. The body is trying to send a message, but the part of the brain that would normally translate that message is offline. The more we talk about this, the more we are led to a fundamental question that has puzzled philosophers and scientists for centuries. What is consciousness? Where does it reside? Is it a single centralized command center in the brain, or is it a distributed network, a chorus of voices singing in unison? We see echoes of this question in the peculiar phenomena of dreams. When we dream, we are in an altered state of consciousness. We are not aware of our physical bodies, but we are experiencing a vivid, often surreal reality created entirely within our minds. In a way, a person experiencing anesthesia awareness is in a similar state, but with one terrifying difference: the dream is not their own. It's a dream of the surgical theater, a dream of the tools, the voices, and the strange, numb sensations. It's a dream that feels all too real, all too present. The brain is creating this internal narrative, this story of the surgery, even though the conscious mind is meant to be asleep. It's a reminder that the brain is a storyteller, a myth maker, and that even in its quietest moments, it is still hard at work weaving its narratives. This brings us to a fascinating scientific concept called general anesthesia. General anesthesia isn't just about putting you to sleep. It's a controlled, medically induced coma. It's a complex and multifaceted process that uses a combination of drugs to achieve three main goals: hypnosis, which is the state of unconsciousness; analgesia, which is the absence of pain; and muscle relaxation, which prevents the body from moving during surgery. Anesthesia. Awareness is a failure of the first goal, the hypnosis. It's a failure to achieve that deep, complete state of unconsciousness. But what does it mean for the other two? The patient might still be unable to feel pain in the traditional sense, and their muscles might still be completely relaxed, leaving them utterly paralyzed. This is the most frightening part of the phenomenon, to be aware of what is happening, but to be unable to move to speak to signal for help. It's a kind of isolation so profound it's difficult to even comprehend. It's like being in a glass box watching the world go by, but you can't tap on the glass or make a sound. The history of anesthesia is a story of gradual discovery, a journey from crude, often dangerous methods to the precise, highly controlled process we have today. Early forms of anesthesia, like ether and chloroform, were often a matter of trial and error, and the line between unconsciousness and death was a perilously thin one. In those days, awareness was probably far more common, but our understanding of the brain was so limited that we had no way of even recognizing it. We've come so far since then. We have sophisticated monitoring equipment, a wide array of drugs, and a much deeper understanding of neurobiology. But we are still, in some ways, working with a black box. We can see the electrical signals on the monitor. We can measure the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide, but we still don't have a reliable, direct way of knowing if the light of consciousness has been completely extinguished. It's a bit like trying to figure out what's happening inside a closed room by just listening to the hum of the air conditioner. You can tell if it's on, but you can't tell if anyone is inside. This raises an interesting question. Is it possible that a low level of awareness is happening in more people than we realize, but they simply don't have a conscious memory of it afterward? The existence of implicit memory suggests that this might be the case, a silent epidemic of awareness that never makes it to the surface. This leads us to a strange and little-known scientific fact. Some of the same drugs that are used to put people to sleep in surgery are also used to treat certain mental health conditions like severe depression. The mechanism is different, of course, but the fact that a drug can be used to both shut down the brain's activity and in another context to stimulate it speaks to the immense complexity of our minds. It's a testament to the fact that the brain is not a simple on-off switch. It's a kaleidoscope of chemical reactions and electrical signals, and even a slight change in the balance can have a profound effect. It's a reminder that the lines between consciousness and unconsciousness, between wakefulness and sleep, are far blurrier than we might think. They are not two separate states, but rather a spectrum, a continuous flow from one to the other. Anesthesia awareness is just a brief, startling glimpse into the middle of that spectrum, a moment where the lines have become blurred and you find yourself in a place that is neither here nor there. A place of deep internal stillness that is, in fact, teeming with a quiet internal life. We are so used to the idea of our bodies as a cohesive single entity, a unified self. But what if we were to think of the body as a vast, complex orchestra? Each organ is an instrument, each nerve a string, and the brain, a magnificent conductor, stands at the podium. Anesthesia is designed to put the conductor to sleep, to silence the grand symphony. But as we discussed, sometimes a single section of the orchestra, a small group of violins in the back, continues to play. This is the phenomenon of unspoken sensation. The body has its own quiet way of feeling and reacting. Even when the conscious mind, the part of you that says, I feel, is not there to interpret it. The most common of these unspoken sensations is pain, but not in the way we typically experience it. It's more of a pressure, a pull, a tug, a sensation so foreign that without the brain's ability to label it as pain, it becomes something else entirely, a kind of ghost feeling. The science behind this is both elegant and complex. Our bodies are wired with specialized nerve endings called nociceptors. These are the tiny sensors that are designed to detect potentially harmful stimuli. They are a kind of alarm system, a network of sentinels posted throughout the body waiting to sound the alarm if a threat is detected. When you cut your finger, these nociceptors send an urgent electrical signal hurtling up your spinal cord and into your brain. The brain then processes the signal, interprets it as pain. and a cascade of reactions follows from the involuntary flinch to the conscious feeling of agony. But under anesthesia, the brain's ability to process these signals is for the most part shut down. The signal is sent, but there is no one home to receive the message. The alarm bell rings, but it echoes in an empty hall. However, a fascinating and somewhat unsettling aspect of our nervous system is its ability to bypass certain pathways. It's a bit like a city with a main highway that is closed for construction. Traffic can still find its way through a series of smaller, less traveled side streets. In the case of anesthesia awareness, it is theorized that some of these pain signals might find a way to a different part of the brain, a section that isn't responsible for conscious awareness but is still active. This part of the brain might not be able to say, "I am in pain," but it can still respond to the signal. This is why a patient's heart rate might suddenly spike or their blood pressure might rise, even though they are seemingly unconscious. The body is reacting to the threat, but the conscious mind is completely oblivious. It's a kind of physiological stress response, a silent alarm that is ringing without a listener. It's the body saying something is wrong without the mind having the words to articulate it. This leads us to a beautiful and poignant metaphor for the brain of theater. The conscious mind is the audience, and the stage is where the sensory data of the world is presented. Anesthesia is designed to empty the theater, to turn off the lights and close the curtains. But during an awareness event, it's as if a single spotlight remains on a lone actor on a dark stage. The audience isn't there to watch, but the performance is still happening. The sound of the surgical instruments, the tugging sensation, the doctor's voices. These are all a part of the play, and even though there is no one in the seats, the actor is still performing. This raises an interesting question. If a sensation is felt, but not consciously perceived, can we truly call it pain? It's a philosophical puzzle that has troubled thinkers for centuries, and it is a central question in the study of anesthesia awareness. The truth is, we don't really know for sure if a sensation that bypasses the conscious mind has the same quality of suffering. The pain might be more like a raw data point than an emotional experience. Remember how we talked about implicit memory in our last quiet conversation? This is where it becomes even more relevant. A person who experiences this unspoken sensation might not remember the feeling of pressure or the sound of the surgical tools, but their subconscious mind might have recorded it all, a silent video of the event playing on a loop in the background of their psyche. This can lead to what's called post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. The individual might have no memory of the event itself, but they might experience a sudden and crippling fear of hospitals, a terror of confined spaces, or recurring nightmares that make no sense to them. The mind is a strange and beautiful thing. It can bury a trauma so deep you don't remember it, but it can also let that trauma haunt you from the shadows, a ghost in the machine that won't let you rest. The science of pain is far more intricate than we often give it credit for. We tend to think of it as a simple cause and effect relationship. You get hurt. You feel pain. But the reality is that pain is a construct of the brain, a story it tells you in order to protect you. A fascinating scientific example of this is the phenomenon of phantom limb pain. People who have had a limb amputated can still feel intense pain in the limb that is no longer there. The limb is gone, but the brain's map of the body, the neural pathways that used to signal from that limb, are still very much present. The brain, in its attempt to make sense of the new reality, starts to generate pain signals from a part of the body that doesn't exist. This is a beautiful and sad illustration of how the brain can create its own reality, a truth that is both deeply unsettling and profoundly moving. Anesthesia awareness is a different but similar kind of reality construction. The brain is presented with sensory data that it can't make sense of, and in its attempt to create a narrative, it can fill in the blanks with distorted, unsettling feelings. The use of propofol, a common anesthetic drug, is a beautiful example of the quiet poetry of pharmacology. Propofol is often described as a milk of amnesia. It works by enhancing the effects of a neurotransmitter called GABA, which is the brain's primary inhibitory messenger. Think of GABA as the bouncer at the nightclub of your consciousness. When propofol is introduced, it makes the bouncer stronger, more effective at turning people away. It tells the neurons, hey, let's take a break. Let's calm down. This creates a deep state of relaxation and unconsciousness. An awareness event in this context is like a few stubborn partygoers who managed to sneak past the bouncer. They're still in the nightclub, they're still dancing, but they're in a dimly lit corner, a part of the club that no one is really paying attention to. The party is happening, but it's a silent internal one. This leads to a little-known fact that adds another layer of mystery to our conversation. The brain can still process and respond to stimuli, even when it is in a state of deep unconsciousness. This has been shown in studies where subjects under anesthesia were played a series of words. When they woke up, they had no conscious memory of hearing the words, but when they were later asked to complete a word association task, they were more likely to use the words they heard while unconscious. This is a powerful demonstration of the brain's ability to learn and remember even when the conscious mind is offline. It's like a quiet student in the back of the classroom who is not participating in the discussion, but is still absorbing all the information. This raises another interesting question. What other information is the unconscious mind absorbing? Is it the quiet anxieties of the surgical team? The subtle hum of the machines? The truth is, we don't really know for sure, and this is a central and lingering mystery. The experience of anesthesia awareness is not always one of terror and panic. In some cases, it can be a feeling of detachment, a strange and ethereal floating sensation. It's a bit like being a ghost in your own body, watching a play that you are also a part of. The lack of conscious awareness of pain can be a strange comfort, a silver lining in a dark cloud. But even without the pain, the feeling of helplessness of being a passive spectator in your own life can be deeply unsettling. It's a profound loss of control, a brief but intense moment where you are no longer the master of your own domain. And for a species that has built entire civilizations on the concept of agency and free will, this loss of control, even for a moment, is a terrifying thing. The story of anesthesia is in many ways the story of our relationship with our own minds. It's a story of our attempts to tame and control the great swirling mystery of consciousness. We have learned to manipulate its chemistry, to turn its light on and off, and to silence its constant chatter. But in the rare event of anesthesia awareness, the mind reminds us that it is not a machine we can simply turn on and off. It is a living, breathing thing, a vast and unknowable universe, and every so often, a star still shines in the darkness, a quiet reminder of the immense and beautiful mystery of being. The chemical veil that we pull over the mind during surgery is a masterpiece of modern science, a testament to our ability to manipulate the very molecules of consciousness. It is a carefully orchestrated ballet of drugs, each with a specific role, working in concert to create a state of profound but temporary oblivion. The core concept behind these drugs is to disrupt the brain's electrical language, to muffle the conversation between neurons so effectively that the light of consciousness simply fades away. Think of the brain as a sprawling network of interconnected highways. Anesthesia is like a series of strategically placed roadblocks that prevent the flow of traffic, bringing the entire system to a quiet temporary halt. At the heart of this process is a fascinating group of chemicals known as anesthetic agents. These drugs are designed to interact with specific receptors on the surface of our brain cells, our neurons. A neuron, in its simplest form, is a tiny electrical wire, and its job is to send and receive signals. These signals are the basis of everything we think, feel, and do. Anesthetic agents, such as propofol, the one we mentioned earlier, or sevoflurane, an inhaled gas, work by binding to these receptors and altering the way the neuron behaves. they don't just turn the neuron off. They change its fundamental nature. They make it more difficult for the neuron to fire to send its signal. They essentially turn down the volume of the brain's entire electrical chorus. One of the most profound and poetic aspects of this process is that the brain's own chemistry is already wired for quiet. We have a neurotransmitter called GABA, or gamma-aminobutyric acid, which is the brain's primary inhibitory messenger. It's the brain's natural sedative, a kind of internal shh. When a GABA molecule attaches to a neuron, it makes the neuron less likely to fire. Anesthetic drugs are designed to mimic or enhance the effects of GABA. They are like a master amplifier for the brain's own quietest voice. By making the GABA system more effective, they create a state of profound inhibition, a stillness so complete that consciousness which relies on the constant buzzing conversation of neurons simply cannot exist. It's a beautiful and elegant solution, using the brain's own architecture to silence itself. Anesthesia awareness in this context is a kind of pharmacological miscalculation. It's a moment when the dose of the anesthetic isn't quite enough to fully amplify the GABA system. The roadblocks are there, but they're not quite big enough to stop all the traffic. A few cars, a few electrical signals manage to slip through. They are not enough to create a full conscious experience, but they are enough to create a flicker of awareness, a whisper of sensation. This is a crucial distinction. It's not that the drugs aren't working at all. It's that they are not working to their full capacity. The symphony is mostly silent, but a few quiet, solitary notes can still be heard. A fascinating and little-known scientific fact is that some anesthetic drugs can actually have different effects on different parts of the brain. The brain is not a monolithic structure. It is a series of interconnected regions, each with a specialized function. There is the cerebral cortex, the seat of higher-level thought and consciousness, the limbic system, which is responsible for emotions and memory, and the brainstem, which controls vital functions like breathing and heart rate. Anesthetic drugs are designed to target the cortex and the limbic system to put the higher-level functions to sleep while leaving the brainstem largely untouched. This is why you can be deeply unconscious, but still breathing on your own. It's a delicate balance, a quiet and intricate dance between silencing the mind and keeping the body alive. But what if the drugs don't target these regions with perfect precision? What if a small part of the limbic system, a tiny corner of the brain responsible for raw emotional response, remains active? This could explain why some people who experience anesthesia awareness report feelings of intense fear and anxiety, even if they don't consciously remember the surgical details. The emotional response is there a raw and primal feeling, but the conscious mind, the part of the brain that would contextualize that feeling, is offline. It's a feeling without a cause, a terror without a face. This raises an interesting question. Is an emotion that is not consciously felt still a valid emotion? The truth is, we don't really know for sure, but the lasting psychological effects on some patients suggest that the answer is a complicated and unsettling yes. The elegance of anesthesia is in its temporary nature. The drugs are designed to be metabolized quickly by the body, to be broken down and flushed out of the system. This is why a person wakes up after surgery. The roadblocks are slowly lifted, the traffic begins to flow again, and the light of consciousness returns. But the journey back to full awareness is often a slow and disorienting one. It's a bit like waking up from a deep, strange dream. You are in a different place than you were before you fell asleep, and for a few moments, the line between dream and reality can be blurred. This is the post-operative period, and it is a time of confusion and vulnerability. For someone who has experienced anesthesia awareness, this period can be even more disorienting, a time when the echoes of the surgery can linger, whispering to them from the shadows of their memory. The entire process from the first dose of the anesthetic to the final moments of waking up is a profound and mysterious journey. It is a journey into the self, a temporary dissolution of the ego, a moment where the very concept of I is put on hold. And for the vast majority of people, this journey is a peaceful and uneventful one. They fall asleep, they wake up, and they have no memory of the time in between. The veil of chemicals is so effective that they don't even know it was ever there. But for the rare few, that veil is not quite opaque. It's a thin, translucent thing, and through its delicate fabric, they catch a glimpse of the quiet, unsettling reality of their own vulnerability. It's a humbling reminder that for all our scientific advancements, for all our understanding of the brain, there is still so much that remains a beautiful and unknowable mystery. The study of anesthetic drugs has also led to a deeper understanding of memory itself. We know that memory is not a single unified thing. It is a complex and layered process that involves different parts of the brain. There is short-term memory, which is like a mental scratch pad, and long-term memory, which is a more permanent storage system. There is also explicit memory, which is the conscious recall of facts and events, and implicit memory, which is the unconscious recall of skills and habits. Anesthetic drugs are particularly good at disrupting the formation of explicit memory. They prevent the brain from taking the raw sensory data of the surgery and turning it into a coherent, consciously recallable narrative. But they are less effective at disrupting implicit memory, which is why a person can be aware of the surgery on a subconscious level, but have no conscious memory of it. It's a beautiful and unsettling example of the mind's ability to remember and forget at the same time. The most profound thing about this entire process is that it forces us to confront the very nature of our own existence. What is it that makes us us? Is it our memories? Our emotions? Our ability to think and reason? Anesthesia awareness challenges all of these assumptions. It shows us that we can be without our conscious thoughts, without our memories, without our sense of self, and yet still be a living, breathing human being. The body is there, the brain is active, but the light of I is dimmed. It's a fleeting glimpse into a state that is neither life nor death, but something in between. A state of deep internal stillness that is in its own quiet way a profound and moving mystery. As the chemical veil settles over the mind, the grand bustling city of the brain begins to quiet. But it doesn't fall completely silent. There are echoes in the cerebral cortex phantom perceptions that can arise from the residual activity of a mind that is not quite fully asleep. The cerebral cortex, that wrinkled outer layer of the brain, is the part of us that thinks, reasons, and is aware. It's the part that holds our consciousness, our memories, our sense of self. And in the moments of anesthesia, awareness, it is as if a faint, almost imperceptible light is still glowing within its vast, dark chambers. The science behind these echoes is still a matter of intense study, but it is believed to be related to the brain's own electrical rhythms. The brain is never truly silent, even in the deepest sleep. It's a constant symphony of electrical waves, from the fast, high-frequency beta waves of an awake and alert mind to the slow, deep delta waves of dreamless sleep. Anesthesia is designed to push the brain's rhythm into a state of profound slowness, to slow the waves down until they are barely a ripple. But in an awareness event, it is as if a small isolated section of the cortex remains in a faster rhythm, a kind of forgotten island in a sea of stillness. This isolated activity can lead to a phenomenon known as isolated forearm technique, a fascinating and slightly unsettling method that some anesthesiologists use to test for awareness. In this technique, a tourniquet is placed on a patient's arm before the muscle relaxant is administered. This prevents the muscle relaxant from reaching the arm, allowing the patient to still be able to move their hand. If the anesthesiologist then asks the patient to squeeze their hand, a conscious patient would be able to do so, even though they are unable to move the rest of their body. This technique is rarely used today, as we have more sophisticated methods of monitoring, but it is a powerful illustration of the idea that a person can be awake on the inside even when they appear completely still on the outside. It's a reminder that the stillness of the body is not always a reflection of the stillness of the mind. The phantom perceptions that arise from these echoes can take many forms. Some people report hearing muffled, distorted conversations. The words are there, but they are not understandable, like listening to a conversation through a thick wall. Others report a feeling of floating, of being detached from their body, a kind of out-of-body experience. This is a fascinating and somewhat common hallucination that is not unique to anesthesia awareness. It is often reported by people who are near death or who have experienced a profound trauma. It is believed to be a kind of defense mechanism, a way for the mind to distance itself from a terrifying or overwhelming experience. In the context of anesthesia awareness, it is a kind of psychological shield, a way for the mind to escape from a reality that it cannot comprehend. A beautiful and profound metaphor for this is a radio that is not quite tuned to the right frequency. You can hear the static, the white noise, but every so often a snatch of a song or a fragment of a voice comes through. It's not enough to understand the message, but it's enough to know that something is there. The brain is like that radio, and anesthesia is the force that tries to turn it off. But in an awareness event, the dial is not turned far enough, and a few stray signals, a few faint whispers, manage to break through the static. This is the essence of a phantom perception. It's not a full coherent signal, but it is a powerful and unsettling reminder that the brain is still listening. Remember how we talked about the brain's ability to tell a story? This is where that idea becomes even more relevant. In the absence of a coherent narrative, the brain will create one. It will take the phantom perceptions, the muffled sounds, the feeling of pressure, the sense of detachment, and it will weave them into a kind of dream. But it is a dream without a narrative arc, a story without a beginning, a middle, or an end. It is a series of disjointed images, a collection of unsettling feelings, a strange and confusing tableau. This is what can make the experience so deeply traumatic. It's not just that the person is aware, it's that their brain is trying to make sense of that awareness in a way that is utterly impossible. One of the strangest and least understood aspects of this phenomenon is the role of memory. We know that anesthesia is very good at disrupting the formation of explicit memory. But what if the phantom perceptions are not a conscious memory, but a kind of emotional memory? A memory that is not stored as a picture or a story, but as a feeling of fear, a sense of helplessness, a profound sense of isolation. This kind of memory is much more difficult to erase. It's a bit like a stain on a piece of fabric. You can wash the fabric, and the stain might fade, but it never completely goes away. This is why a person who experiences anesthesia awareness might have a lasting fear of hospitals or a sudden onset of anxiety, even if they have no conscious memory of the event itself. The feeling is there, but the story that would explain the feeling is gone. This leads us to a fascinating and little-known scientific fact about how the brain stores memories. We don't just have one kind of memory. We have a complex and intricate system that is both biological and chemical. Our memories are not like files in a computer. They are a series of interconnected neural pathways, and the more we use a memory, the stronger that pathway becomes. Anesthesia is designed to put a temporary stop to the process of forming these new pathways. It's a bit like closing a road to new construction. But what if a few of the builders, a few of the neurons manage to sneak past the roadblock and lay down a few bricks? The road is not complete, but the foundations are there. This is what can happen during an awareness event. A few fragments of memory are laid down, a few pieces of a story are started, but the full narrative is never completed. The mystery of these echoes in the cerebral cortex is a profound one. It forces us to confront the question of what consciousness is and where it truly resides. Is it a single unified thing, or is it a chorus of a million different voices? The evidence from anesthesia awareness suggests that it might be the latter, That consciousness is not an on-off switch, but a dial that can be turned up or down. And in the moments of awareness, the dial is not at its lowest setting. It's a brief, terrifying glimpse into the middle of that spectrum, a place where the lines between awake and asleep, between conscious and unconscious, have become blurred. It's a quiet, unsettling reminder that the brain is a vast and unknowable universe. And even when we think we have tamed it, it can still surprise us with its strange and beautiful mysteries. The human mind is a vast and mysterious landscape, a territory with many different states of being. From the bright clarity of full wakefulness to the deep, silent darkness of dreamless sleep. Consciousness itself is not a simple on-off switch. It is a spectrum, a continuous flow from one state to another. And within that spectrum lie many fascinating and little-known territories. Anesthesia awareness is a brief, startling glimpse into one of those territories, a place that is neither fully awake nor truly asleep. To understand it, we must first understand the different states of consciousness themselves, the various maps of our inner world. The most familiar of these states, of course, is wakefulness. This is the state you are in right now. Your brain is active, a flurry of electrical signals, and you are aware of yourself and your surroundings. But even within wakefulness, there are different levels. There is the sharp, focused awareness of a deep conversation, the half-drowsy state of reading a book on a Sunday afternoon, and the kind of mindless autopilot awareness of driving a familiar route. All of these are forms of consciousness, but they are very different in their quality and intensity. This is the starting point of our journey, the baseline against which we measure all other states. From wakefulness, we can move into the state of sleep. And even sleep is not a single unified thing. It is a journey through different stages, each with its own unique characteristics. There is NREM sleep, non-rapid eye movement, which is a deep restorative state where the body repairs itself and the mind is relatively quiet. Then there is GEM sleep, rapid eye movement, which is a lighter, more active state where we experience vivid dreams. The brain in REM sleep is a strange and beautiful paradox. It is almost as active as it is when we are awake, but we are completely paralyzed, unable to move. It's a state of profound internal activity and complete external stillness. Anesthesia is designed to create a state that is similar to, but not the same as, deep NREM sleep. The goal is to induce a controlled, medically induced coma, a state of profound unconsciousness, where the brain's activity is significantly dampened. The brain's electrical rhythms are slowed down, and the constant chatter of the neurons is quieted. But in anesthesia, awareness, it is as if the mind has not quite entered the deep, silent ocean of NREM sleep. It is still hovering somewhere near the surface, in a kind of twilight state, a liminal space where the boundaries between awake and asleep are blurred. A fascinating scientific example of this is the study of brainwaves. We can use a technology called electroencephalography, or EEG, to measure the brain's electrical activity. An EEG can show us the different rhythms of the brain, from the fast, buzzing beta waves of wakefulness to the slow, deep delta waves of sleep. When a person is under general anesthesia, their EEG should show a very slow, flatline pattern, a clear indication that the brain is in a state of deep unconsciousness. But in a person experiencing anesthesia awareness, the EEG might show a strange, mixed pattern. It might have the slow waves of unconsciousness mixed with the faster waves of wakefulness. It's a visual representation of the internal paradox, a map of a mind that is neither here nor there. This raises an interesting question. Is it possible that our minds are capable of being in multiple states of consciousness at once? Could we be in a state of deep unconscious sleep in one part of our brain, while another part is in a state of quiet, detached awareness? The truth is, we don't really know for sure. The brain is a masterpiece of parallel processing, a kind of biological supercomputer that can handle multiple tasks at once. It's not a stretch to imagine that it could also be in multiple states of consciousness at once. Anesthesia awareness might be a rare glimpse into this strange and beautiful possibility. The map of consciousness also includes other more unusual states, like the state of a coma or a vegetative state. These are states of profound unconsciousness, but they are not the same as anesthesia. In a coma, the brain has been severely damaged and its ability to function is greatly impaired. In a vegetative state, the person is awake, but they have no conscious awareness. They can open their eyes and respond to a few basic stimuli, but there is no one home. These states are a stark and sobering reminder of the delicate line between being and non-being. Anesthesia, in its own quiet way, is a temporary and reversible journey to the edge of that line. It is a moment where we voluntarily give up our consciousness, trusting that we will get it back. The story of anesthesia is in many ways the story of our relationship with our own vulnerability. We are so used to being in control, to being the master of our own minds. But in the moments of anesthesia, we voluntarily give up that control. We place our trust in the hands of a stranger, a skilled and knowledgeable anesthesiologist who will guide us on this journey into the stillness. And for the vast majority of us that trust is rewarded. We fall asleep, we wake up, and the journey is a quiet and uneventful one. But for the rare few that trust is broken. And in that moment, they are alone in a quiet internal wilderness, a landscape of the mind that is neither here nor there. This leads us to a beautiful and poetic metaphor for consciousness. Imagine a large, beautiful tapestry, a work of art so intricate that it contains all of your memories, your thoughts, your feelings. When you are awake, the tapestry is fully illuminated and you can see every single thread, every single color. When you are asleep, the light is dimmed and you can only see a few blurry images. Anesthesia awareness is like a single stray beam of light that manages to get through the darkness, illuminating just a few of the threads. It's not enough to see the whole picture, but it's enough to know that the tapestry is there. It's a quiet, unsettling reminder that the mind is always present, always weaving its beautiful and complex stories, even in the deepest of silences. The human brain is a magnificent, sprawling city, and consciousness is the bustling activity within it. But what happens when the city is plunged into darkness, when the lights are all turned off and the streets are empty? This is the state of the brain under general anesthesia. It is a theater without an audience, a stage where the actors are still performing, but no one is there to watch. The actors in this case are the millions of neurons, the electrical signals, the quiet humming conversations that make up our inner world. They are still there in a sense, but they are playing to an empty house. The concept of the brain creating its own reality is one of the most profound and poetic aspects of our existence. Our brains are not passive recipients of information from the outside world. They are active storytellers, myth makers, and dream weavers. They take the raw, chaotic data of our senses and they spin it into a coherent, meaningful narrative. They give shape and form to the world, and they give us our sense of self. This is why we can see faces in clouds or hear voices in the white noise of a radio. The brain abhors a vacuum of meaning, and in the absence of a clear signal, it will create one. Anesthesia awareness is a strange and unsettling example of this process in action. The brain is presented with a series of muffled sounds, a feeling of pressure, a vague sense of detachment, and in its attempt to make sense of this information, it creates a story. But the story is fragmented, disjointed, and often terrifying. It is a dream without a narrative arc, a collection of images and feelings that make no logical sense. The person experiencing it is like a ghost in their own body, a passive spectator in a film that is both horrifying and confusing. This raises a fundamental and deeply philosophical question. If the brain is still creating a reality even in the absence of conscious awareness, is that reality still real? The truth is, we don't really know for sure, but the lasting psychological effects on some patients suggest that for them, it is all too real. A fascinating scientific example of the brain's ability to create its own reality is the phenomenon of sleep paralysis. This is a state where a person is fully conscious, but their body is completely paralyzed, a side effect of the brain's natural paralysis during REM sleep. In this state, people often experience vivid, terrifying hallucinations. They might see demons or feel a heavy weight on their chest or hear strange and unsettling noises. The mind is trying to make sense of the disconnect between being awake and being unable to move, and in its attempt to create a narrative, it fills the silence with monsters. Sleep paralysis is a kind of natural temporary form of anesthesia. Awareness, a powerful reminder of how the mind, when left to its own devices, can create its own demons. The brain's storytelling ability is not just limited to moments of altered consciousness. It is at the heart of our everyday lives. Our memories are not like perfect recordings of the past. They are stories that we tell ourselves, stories that are constantly being rewritten and reinterpreted. Every time you remember an event, you are not just retrieving a file, you are recreating a narrative. This is why our memories can change over time, and why two people who experienced the same event can have two completely different memories of it. Our brains are not historians, they are poets. They are not concerned with a perfect objective truth. They are concerned with creating a story that makes sense to us, a story that gives us our sense of self. This leads us to a little-known and fascinating fact about our brains. They are incredibly good at filling in the blanks. Our eyes, for example, have a natural blind spot where the optic nerve connects to the retina. We don't notice it because our brains simply fill in the missing information, creating a seamless and complete picture of the world. In the same way, the brain of a person experiencing anesthesia awareness is trying to fill in the blanks to make sense of the confusing and disjointed sensory information. It is taking the muffled sounds, the feeling of pressure, the sense of detachment, and it is trying to turn it all into a coherent narrative. The result is often a strange and unsettling dream, a story that is both terrifying and confusing. The beauty of this is that it highlights the immense power and resilience of the human mind. Even when the conscious mind is silenced, even when the lights are turned off, the brain is still at work. It is still listening, still processing, still trying to make sense of the world. It is a quiet testament to the fact that consciousness is not a single unified thing, but a vast and complex process that can continue to operate in the background, even when we are not consciously aware of it. The brain, in its own quiet way, is a theater that is always in performance, even when the audience is gone. We have talked about the echoes of the brain, the phantom perceptions, and the mind's ability to create a story from the fragments of sensation. But what about the body itself? While the conscious mind may be silenced, the body has its own quiet internal alarm system, and in the case of anesthesia, awareness that alarm can be ringing in a silent, terrifying way. This is the body's silent alarm, the physiological stress responses that can occur during an awareness event, even if they are not consciously perceived. Think of your body as a highly sensitive and intricate machine, a masterpiece of biological engineering. It is constantly monitoring its own internal state, and it has a series of built-in alarm systems that are designed to protect it from harm. When you are in danger, your body doesn't wait for your conscious mind to tell it what to do. It reacts on a primal, instinctual level. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure rises, and your muscles tense up. This is the fight or flight response, a beautiful and ancient survival mechanism that has been passed down to us from our earliest ancestors. It's the body's way of saying, something is wrong and we need to be ready. Anesthesia is designed to suppress this response. The drugs, in addition to silencing the conscious mind, are also meant to keep the body in a state of deep, peaceful calm. They are meant to tell the body's alarm system, everything is fine, you can stand down. But in an awareness event, it is as if the message is not getting through. The body, sensing the pain, the pressure, the unnatural stillness, starts to sound the alarm. The heart rate rises, the blood pressure increases, and the body releases a flood of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These are the chemical messengers of fear, the silent scream of the body. The most unsettling part of this is that the person who is experiencing it has no conscious awareness of what is happening. They are in a state of complete paralysis, unable to move, unable to speak, and their conscious mind is offline, but their body is in a state of full-blown panic. It's a profound and terrifying disconnect between mind and body, a moment where the two are not in sync. The body is sounding the alarm, but there is no one home to hear it. This is a crucial distinction. It's not just that the person is aware, it's that their body is reacting to a perceived threat in a way that their mind cannot comprehend. A fascinating scientific example of this is the galvanic skin response, or GSR. The GSR is a measure of the electrical conductivity of the skin, which is a direct reflection of the sweat gland activity. When we are stressed or in a state of heightened emotion, our sweat glands become more active and the electrical conductivity of our skin increases. In studies of anesthesia, awareness researchers have found that even in patients who report no conscious memory of the event, their GSR levels spike during the moments of surgery. Their bodies are reacting to the stress even though their minds are completely oblivious. It's a kind of silent, invisible fear, a ghost in the machine that won't let go. This leads us to a beautiful and poetic metaphor for the body and mind. Think of the mind as a captain on a ship, and the body as the ship itself. The captain is in charge, giving the orders, setting the course. But the ship has its own crew, its own internal systems, its own sensors. Anesthesia is like putting the captain to sleep. The ship is still sailing. The crew is still working, but there is no one at the helm. In an awareness event, the ship's sensors start to detect an iceberg ahead, and the crew starts to sound the alarm. The lights flash, the bells ring, but the captain is asleep. The ship is in a state of chaos and panic, even though the captain is completely unaware. This is the essence of the body's silent alarm. The long-term effects of this silent alarm can be just as damaging as a conscious traumatic event. The flood of stress hormones can have a profound effect on the body and the mind, even if the person has no memory of the event. It can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, a condition that is often associated with veterans of war or victims of violent crime. The symptoms can be subtle at first, a vague sense of anxiety, a fear of hospitals, a recurring nightmare that makes no sense. But over time, they can become more severe, leading to panic attacks, depression, and a complete breakdown of the person's mental health. The body remembers even when the mind forgets. This raises an interesting question. Is it possible that the body's silent alarm is not just a side effect of anesthesia awareness, but a kind of precursor to consciousness itself? Is it possible that the first flickers of awareness, the first moments of the mind waking up, are preceded by a series of physiological stress responses? The truth is, we don't really know for sure, but the evidence from studies of the GSR and stress hormones suggests that there is a deep and profound connection between the mind and the body, a connection that is far more complex and mysterious than we could ever imagine. The body in its own quiet way is a kind of sentinel, a guardian of the self, and in the moments of anesthesia, awareness, it is sounding the alarm for a self that is not quite there. The tapestry of human memory is a fragile and beautiful thing, a complex loom woven from 1,000 different threads. Anesthesia, in its own quiet way, is designed to temporarily halt the weaving process, to put the loom to rest. But in the rare event of awareness, the loom doesn't stop completely. A few threads, a few quiet memories are still being woven into the fabric. This is the phenomenon of memory's fragile loom, and it is one of the most mysterious and unsettling aspects of anesthesia awareness. We tend to think of memory as a single unified thing, a kind of mental library where we store all of our past experiences. But the reality is far more complex. Memory is a multi-layered process that involves different parts of the brain and different types of memory. There is explicit memory, which is the conscious recall of facts and events, the kind of memory you use to remember what you had for breakfast this morning. And there is implicit memory, which is the unconscious recall of skills and habits, the kind of memory you use to ride a bicycle or play the piano. Anesthesia is particularly effective at disrupting the formation of explicit memory. It puts a temporary block on the brain's ability to take the sensory data of the surgery and turn it into a coherent, consciously recallable story. But it is less effective at disrupting implicit memory. This is the quiet hidden part of the mind that is still listening, still absorbing information even when the conscious mind is offline. In the context of anesthesia, awareness a person might not remember the sound of the surgical tools or the doctor's voice, but their implicit memory might have recorded it all, a silent video of the event, playing on a loop in the background of their psyche. This can lead to a bizarre and unsettling phenomenon. The patient has no conscious memory of the event, but they experience a host of new symptoms afterward, like a sudden anxiety or a fear of hospitals without knowing why. The memory is there, but it is buried deep, a silent seed waiting to sprout. A fascinating scientific example of implicit memory is a study of amnesiacs, patients with severe amnesia who have no conscious memory of a person they met just minutes ago can still be taught a new skill, like a puzzle or a game. They have no conscious memory of ever having done the puzzle before, but their performance improves with each new attempt. Their implicit memory, the part of the brain that remembers how to do things, is still intact. This is a beautiful and poignant illustration of the idea that the mind can remember and forget at the same time. In the case of anesthesia, awareness, the patient's mind has forgotten the conscious experience of the surgery, but their body and their implicit memory have not. The formation of new memories is a complex and delicate process that involves a part of the brain called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is like the brain's librarian. It takes all the raw sensory data of the day, and it organizes, it files it away, and turns it into a long-term memory. Anesthesia is designed to put the librarian to sleep. The books, the sensory data are still coming in, but there is no one there to file them away. So, they are lost, and they never become a part of the person's long-term explicit memory. But what if the librarian is only half asleep? What if a few of the books, a few of the memories manage to get filed away in a forgotten corner of the library, in a place where they are not easily found? This is what can happen during an awareness event. A few fragments of memory are laid down, a few pieces of a story are started, but the full narrative is never completed. This leads us to a little-known and somewhat poetic fact about memory. It is not a single unified process. It is a series of interconnected events, a complex dance of chemicals and electrical signals. The initial perception of an event, the encoding of that event into a memory, and the retrieval of that memory later on are all separate and distinct processes. Anesthesia awareness is a failure of the second part of that process, the encoding. The person perceives the event, but their brain is unable to encode it into a long-term explicit memory. But the raw data of the perception, the feeling of pressure, the sound of the voices is still there, stored away in a different part of the brain, in the hidden quiet world of implicit memory. The entire experience is a humbling reminder that the mind is not a machine we can simply turn on and off. It is a living, breathing thing, a vast and complex universe with its own set of rules and its own hidden mysteries. And even when we think we have tamed it, it can still surprise us with its strange and beautiful resilience. The tapestry of memory is a fragile thing, and in the quiet moments of anesthesia, awareness, a few new threads are woven into its fabric. A few new stories are started even in the deepest of silences. We have traveled through the quiet valleys of memory and the humming cities of the cerebral cortex, and now we arrive at a question that stands at the very heart of our journey, the ghost in the machine. This is the profound and philosophical question of consciousness itself and whether it is a physical or an ethereal quality. Anesthesia awareness, in its own quiet way, forces us to confront this question with a stark and unsettling clarity. It shows us a state where the body is present, the brain is active, but the light of conscious selfhood, the very essence of you, is dimmed. The history of philosophy is a long, winding road of attempts to understand consciousness. Thinkers from Plato to Descartes have grappled with the idea, and we are no closer to a definitive answer today than we were thousands of years ago. There is dualism, the idea that the mind and the body are two separate and distinct entities. The mind is a kind of ghost, a non-physical entity that inhabits the physical machine of the body. And there is monism, the idea that the mind and the body are one and the same, that consciousness is simply a byproduct of the brain's complex electrical and chemical activity. Anesthesia, in its own way, is a kind of experiment in monism. It is a deliberate attempt to manipulate the physical brain in order to turn off the mind. Anesthesia awareness is a strange and unsettling challenge to both of these ideas. If the mind and body are two separate things, then why does manipulating the body's chemistry have such a profound effect on the mind? If the mind is just a byproduct of the brain's activity, then why does a small flicker of that activity, a small echo in the cerebral cortex, not result in a full conscious experience? The truth is, we don't have a good answer for either of these questions. The mind is a universe in itself, and we are still in the early stages of mapping its vast and mysterious territory. A beautiful and powerful metaphor for this is the concept of a soul in some spiritual traditions. The soul is seen as the animating force of the body, the thing that gives it life and consciousness. When the soul leaves the body dies. Anesthesia, in a strange and unsettling way, is like a temporary eviction of the soul. The body is still there, still breathing, still alive, but the animating force of consciousness is gone. And in an awareness event, it is as if the soul has only half left the building. It is still there, a quiet spectral presence, observing the scene from a distance, unable to intervene. This is a powerful and poetic way of thinking about the experience, and it resonates with the stories of many who have gone through it. The science of consciousness is still in its infancy. We have a lot of data about how the brain works. We can measure its electrical activity. We can see which parts light up when we are thinking or feeling an emotion, but we still have no idea how those electrical signals and chemical reactions translate into the subjective experience of being you. This is what some philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. It's the gap between the physical brain and the conscious mind, the leap from a series of electrical signals to the feeling of the color red or the taste of a sweet strawberry. Anesthesia awareness is a rare and unsettling glimpse into the edges of that gap. It shows us a state where the brain is still functioning, but the feeling of you is not quite there. This raises an interesting and somewhat bizarre scientific fact. There is a theory in quantum mechanics that consciousness is not a product of the brain, but a fundamental part of the universe itself. This is a fringe theory, and it is not accepted by the vast majority of scientists, but it is a beautiful and poetic idea. It is the idea that consciousness is a kind of universal field, a kind of ethereal quality that is everywhere and in everything. Anesthesia in this context is not about turning off consciousness, but about temporarily blocking the brain's ability to tune into that field. And an awareness event is a moment when the brain's antenna is not fully turned off. It is still able to pick up a few stray signals, a few whispers from the great universal field of consciousness. The truth is, we don't really know for sure if consciousness is a product of the brain or a fundamental part of the universe. But the fact that we can even ask that question is a testament to the immense and beautiful mystery of our own minds. Time as we experience it is a constant, steady river, a relentless flow of seconds, minutes, and hours. But in the quiet internal world of our minds, time is not so rigid. It is a soft, pliable thing, a woven tapestry that can be stretched and warped, slowed down, or sped up. This is never more true than in altered states of consciousness, and in the strange, unsettling state of anesthesia. Awareness, the perception of time, can become a distorted and frightening thing. In our normal waking lives, our perception of time is tied to our memories and our consciousness. We experience time as a series of events, a narrative that unfolds in a linear fashion. But in the moments of anesthesia, awareness, the narrative is gone. The memories are not being formed in a coherent way, and the conscious mind, the part of us that keeps track of the clock, is offline. So time as we know it simply ceases to exist. The person might be in surgery for hours, but their internal experience of time might be just a few minutes, or it might be an eternity. It's a profound and unsettling disconnect between the external reality of time and the internal subjective experience of it. A fascinating scientific example of this is the phenomenon of time dilation, which is not just a concept from physics. It is also a psychological reality. In moments of intense fear or stress, our perception of time can slow down. A car crash, for example, might seem to unfold in slow motion, even though it is happening in a matter of seconds. Our brains, in a state of high alert, are processing information at an accelerated rate, and this gives us the subjective feeling that time is slowing down. In the context of anesthesia awareness, the mind is in a state of deep internal stillness, but the body's silent alarm, the flood of stress hormones, might be creating a kind of psychological time dilation. The person is experiencing a kind of slow-motion panic, a terrifying eternity that is happening in a matter of minutes. The brain, in its own quiet way, is a kind of internal clock. It has a series of circadian rhythms, a natural 24-hour cycle that governs our sleep-wake patterns, our body temperature, and our hormonal activity. Anesthesia is designed to put a temporary stop to this clock. It is meant to tell the brain, the day is over, it is time to rest. But in an awareness event, the clock might still be ticking, even though the person is not consciously aware of it. This can lead to a kind of internal confusion, a disconnect between the brain's natural rhythm and the external reality of the hospital room. This leads us to a beautiful and poetic metaphor for time. Imagine time as a vast, empty canvas. When you are awake, you are painting on that canvas, filling it with memories, with feelings, with experiences. When you are asleep, the painting stops and the canvas is empty. Anesthesia awareness is like a single stray drop of paint that lands on the canvas, a single moment of awareness in a vast empty space. It's not enough to create a picture, but it's enough to leave a mark. It's a quiet, unsettling reminder that even in the absence of a conscious narrative, time is still passing, and it is still leaving its quiet, indelible mark on our minds. The entire experience of a distorted perception of time is a humbling reminder that our reality is not a fixed objective thing. It is a subjective internal construct that is created and maintained by our brains, and in the moments of anesthesia, awareness that construct is challenged and broken. The world is a blurry, distorted painting, and time is a strange flowing river, a river that has no beginning and no end. It's a quiet, unsettling glimpse into the fragile and beautiful nature of our own reality. The concept of self is a beautiful and complex paradox. We are so used to the idea of being a single unified entity, a coherent and continuous self that exists from one moment to the next. But what if that self is not a fixed monolithic thing? What if it is a fragile and fluid construct, a story that we tell ourselves to give our lives meaning and coherence? This is the core of the paradox of self and anesthesia. Awareness forces us to confront this question with a stark and unsettling clarity. It shows us a state where the conscious self, the part of you that is listening to these words, is not in control. In our everyday lives, our sense of self is tied to our memories, our emotions, our thoughts, and our ability to act in the world. We feel like we are the ones making the decisions, having the feelings, and remembering the past. But in the moments of anesthesia, awareness, all of these things are disrupted. The memories are not being formed in a coherent way. The emotions are raw, primal, and detached from any conscious understanding, and the ability to act, to move, to speak is completely gone. So if you are not the one experiencing these things, then who is? This is a deep and ancient philosophical question that has been explored by thinkers from a variety of traditions. Some would argue that the self is simply an illusion, a kind of narrative that the brain creates to make sense of the world. In this view, anesthesia awareness is not a breakdown of the self, but a glimpse into the raw, unvarnished reality of the brain, a world without the narrative of you. Others would argue that the self is more than just a product of the brain, that it is a kind of ethereal quality, a ghost in the machine. In this view, anesthesia awareness is a moment when the connection between the ghost and the machine is weakened, a moment when the ghost is still there, but it has lost its ability to control the machine. The truth is, we don't really know which of these views is correct, or if either of them are. But the fact that we can even ask the question is a testament to the immense and beautiful mystery of our own existence. A powerful and poetic metaphor for this is the concept of a river. When you are awake, the river is flowing, and you are a single coherent drop of water within it. You are a part of the flow, a part of the movement. But in the moments of anesthesia, awareness, it is as if the river has frozen. The water is still there, but the movement, the flow, the sense of direction is gone. You are still a drop of water in a sense, but you are not a part of the living, moving river. You are a still silent thing, a fragment of a larger whole. This is the essence of the paradox of self. You are still there in a physical sense, but the living, breathing you is gone. The science behind this is still in its infancy, but there are some fascinating clues. We know that the brain has a series of interconnected networks that are responsible for creating our sense of self. One of these is the default mode network, a network that is active when we are not focused on a specific task. It is the part of the brain that is responsible for our internal monologue, our daydreaming, and our sense of self. Anesthesia is designed to put a temporary stop to this network, to silence the internal monologue and quiet the sense of I. In an awareness event, it is as if this network has not been fully silenced. It is still active, but it is not connected to the rest of the brain in the same way. It is a kind of rogue self, a part of you that is still there but is detached from the rest of your being. This raises an interesting and somewhat unsettling fact. Some of the same parts of the brain that are responsible for our sense of self are also responsible for our experience of pain. This is a powerful and humbling reminder that the self is not just a mental construct, it is a physical and biological one. The feeling of I is deeply intertwined with our physical body, and in the moments of anesthesia, awareness when the body is under stress, the self is also under threat. It is a moment where the two are separated and the mind is left to grapple with the terrifying reality of being a you, without a body, a consciousness without a physical form. When the conscious mind is silenced, the brain does not fall completely still. It enters a strange and beautiful territory, a landscape of whispers from the deep, of strange and often poetic subconscious thoughts that can emerge from a state of semi-awareness. This is the world of dreams, a parallel reality created entirely within our minds and in the rare moments of anesthesia. Awareness, it can become intertwined with the external reality of the surgical room. Dreams are one of the most mysterious and profound aspects of our existence. They are a kind of storytelling that the brain does for itself, a way of processing emotions, memories, and fears that we might not be consciously aware of. In the state of anesthesia, awareness, the brain might take the muffled sounds of the surgical room, the feeling of pressure, the sense of detachment, and it might weave them into a kind of dream. But it is a dream that is both foreign and familiar, a narrative that is both unsettling and confusing. The person might dream of being trapped in a box, or of floating in a dark, empty space, or of being chased by a faceless figure. These are not random nightmares. They are a subconscious interpretation of the raw, unfiltered sensory data of the surgery. A fascinating scientific fact about dreams is their connection to our emotions. The part of the brain that is most active during dreaming is the limbic system, the part of the brain that is responsible for emotions. This is why dreams can feel so real and so intense. Our brains are not just creating images, they are creating feelings. In the context of anesthesia, awareness, the limbic system might be a part of the brain that is not fully silenced. It might be reacting to the stress and the fear of the surgery, and it might be creating a series of powerful emotional dreams that are not connected to any conscious memory. The person might not remember the surgery, but they might be left with a lingering feeling of fear or anxiety, a kind of emotional echo of the dreams they had while they were semi-conscious. This leads us to a beautiful and poetic metaphor for the mind. Think of the mind as a deep ocean. The conscious mind is the surface, the part that is illuminated by the sun, the part that we can see and understand. The subconscious mind is the deep, dark ocean floor, the part that is full of strange and beautiful creatures, of hidden mysteries and forgotten treasures. Anesthesia is a way of temporarily freezing the surface, of putting the conscious mind to sleep. But in an awareness event, the deep, dark ocean floor is still teeming with life. The subconscious mind is still dreaming, still processing, still creating its strange and beautiful narratives. The person might not remember the surface, but the echoes of the deep. The whispers from the subconscious can linger long after the surgery is over. The entire experience is a humbling reminder that the mind is a vast and complex universe, and we are only just beginning to map its territories. It is a universe that is full of its own hidden mysteries, its own strange and beautiful paradoxes. And in the moments of anesthesia, awareness, we are given a brief, unsettling glimpse into the quiet internal world of our own subconscious, a world that is always dreaming, even when we are not. In the quiet internal world of a person experiencing anesthesia awareness, the mind is a strange and beautiful paradox. It is a world without conscious thought, without memory, without a sense of self, and yet it is a world that is steeped in one of the most primal and powerful emotions, fear. This is the labyrinth of fear, the primal instinctual terror that can be triggered by a sense of helplessness and isolation. Fear at its core is a biological and evolutionary imperative. It is a powerful emotion that has been hardwired into our brains over millions of years. Its purpose is to protect us from harm, to alert us to danger, and to prepare our bodies to fight or flee. In our everyday lives, fear is a conscious and contextual emotion. We are afraid of a spider because we have a conscious memory of it, or we are afraid of a car crash because we have a conscious understanding of the danger. But in the moments of anesthesia, awareness fear is a raw, primal, and contextual emotion. It is a fear without a face, a terror without a name. It is the fear of the unknown, the fear of the helpless, the fear of the isolated. A fascinating scientific fact about fear is that it is not just a mental emotion. It is also a physical one. When we are afraid, our bodies release a flood of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones prepare our bodies to fight or flee. Our heart rate increases, our blood pressure rises, and our muscles tense up. This is the fight or flight response, a beautiful and ancient survival mechanism that has been passed down to us from our earliest ancestors. In the moments of anesthesia, awareness, this response is triggered even though the person is not consciously aware of it. The body is in a state of full-blown panic, but the mind is completely oblivious. It's a profound and terrifying disconnect between mind and body, a moment where the two are not in sync. The most unsettling part of this is that the person who is experiencing it has no conscious memory of what is happening. They are in a state of complete paralysis, unable to move, unable to speak, and their conscious mind is offline. But their body is in a state of full-blown panic. It's a kind of silent, invisible fear, a ghost in the machine that won't let go. This can lead to what's called post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. The individual might have no memory of the event itself, but they might experience a sudden and crippling fear of hospitals, a terror of confined spaces or recurring nightmares that make no sense to them. The body remembers even when the mind forgets. This leads us to a beautiful and poetic metaphor for the mind and body. Think of the mind as a captain on a ship and the body as the ship itself. The captain is in charge, giving the orders, setting the course. But the ship has its own crew, its own internal systems, its own sensors. Anesthesia is like putting the captain to sleep. The ship is still sailing, the crew is still working, but there is no one at the helm. In an awareness event, the ship's sensors start to detect an iceberg ahead, and the crew starts to sound the alarm. The lights flash, the bells ring, but the captain is asleep. The ship is in a state of chaos and panic, even though the captain is completely unaware. This is the essence of the labyrinth of fear. The entire experience is a humbling reminder that the mind is not a machine we can simply turn on and off. It is a living, breathing thing, a vast and complex universe with its own set of rules and its own hidden mysteries. And even when we think we have tamed it, it can still surprise us with its strange and beautiful resilience. The labyrinth of fear is a quiet, unsettling reminder that the mind is always present, always listening, and that even in the deepest of silences, it can still be afraid. After the long and unsettling journey through the quiet territories of anesthesia, there comes the slow, gentle process of the quiet reawakening. This is the moment when the chemical veil begins to lift, when the roadblocks are slowly removed, and the lights of the city of the mind begin to flicker back on. For most people, this is a peaceful and uneventful process. They drift back to consciousness with no memory of the time in between. But for the rare few who have experienced anesthesia awareness, the reawakening can be a confusing and difficult time, a period when the echoes of the surgery can linger whispering to them from the shadows of their memory. The science behind the reawakening is a fascinating and beautiful example of the body's natural resilience. The anesthetic drugs, which were designed to put the brain to sleep, are slowly broken down by the body and flushed out of the system. The brain's own natural rhythms begin to return, and the constant chatter of the neurons starts up again. It's a bit like a power outage where the lights slowly come back on room by room until the entire house is once again filled with light. But the journey back to full awareness is often a slow and disorienting one. The person might be confused, they might have trouble remembering where they are, and they might feel a profound sense of detachment from their own body. This is a normal part of the process, a kind of mental jet lag that is a side effect of the mind's long journey into the stillness. But for those who have experienced anesthesia awareness, the reawakening can be far more complex. The fragments of memory, the quiet echoes of the surgery, the lingering sense of fear and helplessness can all come rushing back to the surface. The person might have a strange and unsettling feeling that something is wrong, even if they can't consciously remember what it is. They might have a sudden and crippling fear of hospitals, a terror of confined spaces, or a series of recurring nightmares that make no sense to them. The mind, in its own quiet way, is trying to make sense of a trauma that it can't consciously remember, and the result is a kind of psychological ghost that won't let go. This leads us to a beautiful and poetic metaphor for the mind and its journey back to consciousness. Think of the mind as a garden that has been covered in a thick blanket of snow. The snow is beautiful and silent, and it covers all the plants and flowers, all the memories and emotions. Anesthesia is the snow. The reawakening is the slow, gentle melting of the snow. The sun comes out, the snow begins to melt, and the plants and flowers, the memories and emotions, slowly begin to reappear. But for a person who has experienced anesthesia, awareness of few of the plants, a few of the memories have been damaged by the frost. They might reappear, but they are not the same as they were before. They are twisted, distorted, and they are a constant painful reminder of the long cold winter they have just been through. The long-term psychological effects of an awareness event can be just as damaging as a conscious traumatic event. The flood of stress hormones, the feeling of helplessness, the profound disconnect between mind and body can all have a lasting effect on the person's mental health. It can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, a condition that is often associated with veterans of war or victims of violent crime. The symptoms can be subtle at first: a vague sense of anxiety, a fear of hospitals, a recurring nightmare that makes no sense. But over time, they can become more severe, leading to panic attacks, depression, and a complete breakdown of the person's mental health. The body remembers even when the mind forgets. The entire experience is a humbling reminder that the mind is not a machine we can simply turn on and off. It is a living, breathing thing, a vast and complex universe with its own set of rules and its own hidden mysteries. And even when we think we have tamed it, it can still surprise us with its strange and beautiful resilience. The quiet reawakening is a testament to that resilience, a moment where the mind, in its own quiet way, begins the long and difficult journey of healing. From a trauma that it can't even remember, we have journeyed through the quiet and unsettling landscape of anesthesia awareness, from the whispered narratives of the cerebral cortex to the body's silent alarm. We have explored the fragile loom of memory, the paradox of self, and the labyrinth of fear. Now we arrive at the final frontier, the lingering questions, the unresolved mysteries that stand at the very heart of this strange phenomenon. This is a final reflection on the nature of consciousness pain and the delicate boundary between self and non-self. The central mystery of anesthesia awareness is not just that it happens, but why. Why, in a world of advanced medical technology and sophisticated drugs, does a small flicker of consciousness manage to break through the veil of oblivion? The most common explanation, as we've discussed, is a simple pharmacological miscalculation. The dose of the anesthetic wasn't quite enough. But what if it's more than that? What if it's a testament to the immense and beautiful resilience of the human mind, a quiet rebellion against a state of complete and total stillness? It's a humbling thought, a poetic idea that our minds, in their own quiet way, are fighting to stay alive, fighting to hold on to that fragile thread of consciousness. A fascinating and beautiful metaphor for this is the concept of emergence. Emergence is the idea that a complex system like a flock of birds or a human mind can exhibit behaviors that are not present in its individual parts. A single bird, for example, cannot fly in a V formation, but a flock of birds can. In the same way, a single neuron is not conscious, but a network of billions of neurons is. Consciousness, in this view, is an emergent property of the brain. Anesthesia is an attempt to disrupt that emergence, to stop the neurons from forming the complex network that gives rise to consciousness. And an awareness event is a moment when that network, in a strange and beautiful act of defiance, manages to reform, if only for a moment. This raises an interesting question. Is it possible that we will never be able to fully understand consciousness by studying individual neurons, and that we must study the network as a whole? The truth is, we don't really know for sure, but the evidence from anesthesia awareness suggests that the mind is more than just the sum of its parts. The story of anesthesia awareness is also a story about pain. We have talked about the difference between conscious pain and the unspoken sensation of the body's silent alarm. But what is the true nature of pain? Is it just a signal from the body that something is wrong, or is it a subjective emotional experience that is tied to our conscious self? The phenomenon of phantom limb pain, which we discussed earlier, suggests that pain is far more than just a signal from the body. It is a construct of the brain, a story it tells us to protect us. In the moments of anesthesia awareness, the brain is still receiving the signal, but it is unable to tell the story. The pain is there in a raw physical sense, but the conscious suffering is not. It's a profound and unsettling distinction, a reminder that the mind and the body are two separate but deeply intertwined things. The final and most profound mystery is the delicate boundary between self and non-self. Anesthesia is a deliberate and temporary journey to the edges of that boundary, a moment when we voluntarily give up our sense of self. But in an awareness event, that journey is not complete. The self is still there, a quiet spectral presence, observing the scene from a distance, unable to intervene. It's a terrifying glimpse into a world where you are not in control, a world where the very idea of you is challenged and broken. The entire experience is a humbling reminder that the self is not a fixed, monolithic thing. It is a fragile and fluid construct, a story that we tell ourselves to give our lives meaning and coherence. And in the quiet moments of anesthesia, awareness that story is challenged and broken. As the final words of our journey begin to gently brush past you, I'd like to invite you to take a slow, deep breath. Let the quiet rhythm of your breath carry you like a soft wave on a calm ocean. Our exploration of the mind's quietest and most unsettling territories is now coming to a close. We have wandered through the echoes of the cerebral cortex, felt the whisper of the body's silent alarm, and contemplated the fragile loom of memory. We've touched on the paradox of the self and the labyrinth of fear, all in an effort to understand a mind that is both present and absent at once. I'd like to gently ask one last time, where is the place you're staying now? The time in that place at this very moment. How is it flowing? Wherever you are and whenever you are, may the quiet mystery of your own mind bring you a sense of peace and not of unease. May you find comfort in the fact that even in the deepest of silences, your mind is still a vast and beautiful universe full of its own hidden mysteries and its own quiet resilience. Take another deep calming breath. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest. Let your thoughts slowly fade like the soft glow of a dying fire. And as you let go, know that you are safe, you are present, and you are in the quiet, gentle arms of a deep and peaceful rest.